Welcome everybody to what month it is? March's edition of the Patch Tuesday Support Group. It's a safe place to talk and cry about patching. We are joined by mostly cry. Is it really that bad? You keep hitting.
I mean, it's not great.
Okay. So as always, we are joined by Jordan, and as not always, we have Rudy with us. Thanks for pitching. Rudy's going to pay attention to the chat, and he's going to interrupt and tell us when you guys have some super fun heckling going on. We look forward to that. And without further ado, take it over, Jordan.
All right. I'm going to go ahead and start with figuring out how to share my screen because, as is tradition, it turns out Zoom is hard.
Yeah.
Get that shared. Cool. And there you go. So this month, depending on how you'd like to play counting games, in terms of counting the number of patches that we have a whopping total of 67 updates. Depending on how you count them, the number comes out to 67, 57, or 25. The reason why I say it depends on how you count them is because it depends on if you count them as unique updates or if you count them across multiple versions and things like that. If you count them as uniques, it's technically only 25 KBs for it, of which they addressed 47 different vulnerabilities. Now, this is all well and good in terms of what actually came out this month, but I want to talk about a couple of specific vulnerabilities this month for Microsoft because apparently we just all decided that, Hyper-V and anything to do with VHDs was just a good time to exploit this month. There were not one, not two, not three, but 7 0 days that came out this month that got fixed, of which 6 were actively exploited at the time of release. So, for your reading pleasure, I suggest that you maybe go and read CVE 2025-26633. This first one here is a MMC security feature bypass, where you basically, if you can get somebody to launch a file, either as admin or not as admin, either or, it does not require privilege on the box. It basically enables them to get system admin access on the box and become admin on the box if they can get you to open that said file, causing the MMC to actually launch for it. This is the second RCE in the MMC framework within the past, I believe, 6 months. The next one on the list here is CVE 2025-24993. Again, that's CVE 2025-24993. This was a NTFS, guess what, VHD vulnerability, in which if you can get an end user to mount a VHD or this compromised VHD, it immediately then starts to run programs, and congratulations, you're now owned, and it gets system access for it. This was then compounded by yet another joyous vulnerability called CVE 2025-24991, and guess what? Second verse, same as the first, just a little bit louder and a little bit worse. Same attack vector, but done via USB, where if you just plug in the USB, it auto-mounts the VHD that is attached to it and starts and basically owns you for it. And then there is another one on top of that, CVE 2025-24984, same thing with a USB stick. Again, exact same physical attack, but it just requires a USB stick for it, except it exploits a file system vulnerability instead. And then, guess what? Third verse, same as the first, a little bit louder and a little bit worse. Yet more VHD shenanigans, but attacking the FAT file system exploit. And this is the first one that's been done since, I believe, 2022, basically. Where, again, a VHD getting mounted via a FAT file system exploit allows them to own the computer for it. And last but not least, there is an active kernel attack that is running around out there for it, which is CVE 2025-24983 for it. Again, that's 2025-24983 for it along the way. Yeah.
You weren't actually expecting to show us those, were you, Jordan?
I was not expecting to show you those. I simply just have my handy-dandy dashboard up here of different vulnerabilities for it, and I was just reading the CVEs that are underneath it for it. The reason why I'm telling you the CVEs as opposed to the KBs is because if I sat here and listed out the KBs, I'd still be listing the numbers off because the CVEs exist through multiple KBs per operating system. So this is one of those unique not unique, but one of those cases where if you go through and you pick up the CVEs instead, because the CVEs is actually how you would want to track it because it's in multiple different KBs along the way for it. I was a summer camp counselor in a past life, whoever saw that and commented that multiple times over, in fact, along the way. So, moral of the story is, turns out patches are hard this month, and you should do that, and probably faster than what you thought you should. So happy birthday to me. My birthday's this month, and I got 7, 0 days as a present. The specific MMC vulnerability, since people are talking about here in the chat, is 26633, and the fat file system exploit is 24985. Awesome. That all being said, let's jump over to third-party updates this month. Slightly less stressful, but still a whole lot of them. Somebody asked a question here. In the future, can we get a PDF of slides with the key CVEs? You absolutely will. These will be available to you at patchtuesday.com. We post a screenshot of the slides here, as well as the vulnerabilities and KBs that are of particular note at patchtuesday.com after the webinar, as well as with the video usually. This month from Patch My PC, we released 1,500 unique updates. Of those updates, 18 of them were Google Chrome. That's yet again another month of a Google Chrome update every other day. Wait. Trying not to die.
Well, that was nice.
That was a
It was nice
candy.
working with you, Jordan.
Yeah,
Except
nice
for the
to meet
part
you.
where I was working and you were there.
No, there's that, I guess. 15 Microsoft Edge vulnerability patches this month, 12 from Firefox, 10 from Opera. Out of those 1,501 updates, there were only 40 unique vulnerabilities, but there were 94 vulnerability, basically like 94 different actual replicated across the different patches for it. Fairly low number of critical third-party updates this month for it, just in general from third-party updates, with a spike on both the 4th and the 11th in terms of the actual number of updates and where they came out over the time period in March. Nothing terribly interesting outside of course, the typical. There are some kind of brutal third-party updates in the web browsers, both in Chrome and Edge because of Chromium once again. But nothing terribly exciting in the world of third-party, oh god, everything's on fire, other than ESXi updates and some other VMware things, which I think, Brian, you might have some URLs to talk about. And with that being said, before I choke and die on the floor, over to you, Brian.
Oh no, I'm totally waiting. I'm totally willing to just wait and watch you choke and die.
Choke and die on the floor? That sounds
I'm
about
totally
right.
here for it. 1 second. Okay. As always, I'm thinking there's not a lot of news this week, and then this month, and then you go take a look, and it's like, oh crap, that really does pile up. So the first thing, I'm just going to go ahead and share my screen if I can figure out how technology works, but I can't. Of course, it's not really what I do here. Share. Okay, I'm going to share this, although we're not really going to talk about it this very second. So just some general patching news. I'm seeing some anecdotal evidence. If you don't go to Reddit's Patch Tuesday mega thread on our system, seeing some anecdotal evidence that this month patches are taking kind of an excessively long time to install. And if you are the kind that sits there and watches your servers patch in real time, A, I'm sorry, but B, they're seeing a bunch of them hung on 100% for 20, 30 minutes. And that could be concerning, but no actual...
I mean, Server 2016, it's an entire patching history, basically, but this month for everybody?
Right. Well, yeah, I think most of what I've heard is Server 2022, but it's just it gets to 100% and just sits there for a very long time. No reports of it actually failing per se. It just is a weird behavior that people hadn't seen. Also, I don't have the message center link for this, but the March Keynote updates are released. They fixed some SSH connection issues that existed on Windows 10 and Server 2019. They had Windows 11 and Server 2022, I think, had the same issues late last year, but they got fixed first. And this month's updates should go ahead and fix those for you. There is a known issue with January's preview release, and presumably those then got included in the February cumulative updates, and to date they're not fixed. But we got this known issue that U.S. printers might print random text. So if you are seeing USB printers in your org and they are just shooting out complete gibberish, that's a known issue. There is no fix for it. Not in
Sure, there is. Throw the printers away.
What's that? Yeah, stop printing. There is no fix for it in terms of this month or last month's update, but there is a known issue rollback. If you're not familiar with KIRs, they are a group policy you can set. I think there's an MSI release or something like that. Go ahead and click that link and you'll get it. So there is, if you're experiencing that issue, it's a known issue. It's not fixed in the right way, but you can go and roll that back. Just another note that if you are running Firefox, you want to make sure you are on a reasonably updated version, specifically anything released July 2024 or greater, which hopefully all of you are. I kind of trust most of you are customers, but if not, you might want to take a special attention to that, because in this month, in fact, tomorrow, the root certificate is going to expire on some of those older versions. I mean, the root CA that Firefox itself trusts. That's going to expire, and that could create some super fun issues for you. Moving on to some security news. I think this is kind of a little bit what you were talking about, Jordan, but maybe not. There are a bunch of 0 days that were found and have been in theory.
That's the kernel one. Yep. That one's been around since 2023. That's the kernel one. That was the last one in the list, which was 2025 24983, I believe.
Right.
And a
So
lot of
this.
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, those all look familiar. Mm-hmm.
Right. It's not good. So go ahead and pay attention to those. You want to, you might see your security department coming at you and saying, "Hey, we want to install these on certain devices super duper fast." It's not good. If you're using any Broadcom's stuff, specifically the VMware side of things, so ESXi, vSphere, Workstation, Fusion, Cloud Foundation, or I guess I'll call it Cloud Platform. They had some exploits. They don't seem remotely exploitable. Like my read on this seems to be like, hey, you need to be out of the box and you need to have some administrative access already. So slightly less concerning, but that's a pretty wide swath of software, especially the ESXi and vSphere. Like those are things that I know people are going to use, are using. So there's a bunch of vulnerabilities that are not great. Apparently some websites are trying to trick people into go ahead and updating their browser, and then to go ahead and basically hose the box. That's kind of a fun one. I'm not sure it's really new or novel, but some of them are, these are legitimate. So in some cases, as you see here, legitimate websites that you might actually trust, but they're having this JavaScript injection. So that's a fun one to look out for. If you are in December, we talked a bit about BeyondTrust had a remote control tool that got compromised, leading to things, many orgs having issues, including the U.S. Department of Treasury. And this is a kind of a rundown of, okay, here's what the actual vulnerability was, and it's actually ended up tying back to a Postgres SQL vulnerability. And so here's the write-up on the overall BeyondTrust compromise, but then here's also Postgres SQL talking about their 0 day that they found and have fixed. I don't know that this is anything you can actually go fix yourself, especially on the Postgres side. On the BeyondTrust side, you're probably already patched for that. But I guess if you have any other Postgres database kicking out there, you might want to go ahead and pay attention and get those updated. Similarly, if you are using any of Juniper's Session Smart stuff, so that's their router and conductor, this one is rather concerning. From what I can read, this is remotely exploitable. So, and if you do so, you can get admin access to those systems. So that's not great. If you're using any of Juniper's stuff, specifically their Smart Session or Smart Conductor, go ahead and take a look at those, and you want to get those updated probably pretty damn quick. This one, I don't want to over alarm anyone because I really can't. I mean, I'm just shocked at it. But this is a proof of concept for a privileged escalation on Parallels desktop. So Parallels is an app you run, I believe, on your Macs. So you can run Windows. So it's probably a niche for many of us, but I do know you probably also have people doing it. This is an unfixed.
You mean yet
What's that?
more VHD, and virtualization 0 days?
Right, right,
Yet more products, Ryan?
right.
This one?
You got it. You got it. And
Mhm.
and so the work on this is that they had an issue. They, in theory, put a fix out for it a while ago. I think this is back like in May or March of last year. And then somebody started looking at that fix and said, well, it's not all the way fixed. And reported to them months ago and heard no updates or fixes for it. And so they finally decided to go and publish their results. So there's no like actually CVE attached to this one, which I'm a little confused with. It seems like that's what you would do, but maybe Jordan knows why I didn't go that way. Moving along, if you have apparently some researchers looked for access management systems, and when we say that, what they're talking about are the kinds of physical security things you might put on your doors when you scan a badge. Apparently, maybe putting those out on the internet was a really, really bad idea. So in their own words, they found roughly 50,000 systems out there sitting on the internet that have various levels of vulnerabilities in them. So if you want it, that sounds like a fun reading to you. Go for it.
Turns out IoT devices are uniquely, incredibly susceptible to being hacked and compromised. And as people have started to try to embrace that more and more with like smart office infrastructure for stuff, so they can do things like, connect it to Azure so they can do SSO, right? And actually tie it to your ID and everything else like that. Turns out sometimes people are bad at that. And they don't just open it up to be able to talk to Azure. They open it up to be able to talk to anything and to let anything talk to it for reasons. That's bad. In general, most like environmental systems like this are just not well managed. They've got old, creaky design philosophy on them. Even the more modern stuff that comes out, right? It's running JavaScript that's vulnerable within 2 weeks of it being updated. In some intentionally vulnerable or not intentionally vulnerable too is the thing, right? Like,
and often they're presented as sort of a hardware solution, right? Like you just come in, you install this thing, and you plug it into your network, and like, hey, it's awesome and everything. It's hardware. What could go wrong?
Yeah, and a lot of the times it gets implemented not by a company, and this is not a critique, right? Just an observation. A lot of the times it's implemented by a hardware company, right? A company that specializes in construction and hardware and things like that, and not cybersecurity for it, right? Because those are the people that go out and get certified, and being able to implement it is people who get certified in running cat lines, right? Or being able to run the actual underlying cable and security wires for it. But then the actual rest of the implementation is not done. There's no secondary cyber professional or anything like that for it behind the scenes.
The implementation ends as, we hook this into your network.
Yeah, we hooked up your network. Good luck.
May God have mercy on your soul.
Yeah. And also we allowed it to talk to the internet. It's fine.
Yeah, of course we did. I mean, that's the whole point. Okay. Yeah, thanks for that. A little bit of fun drama. For VS Code, one of the popular themes for it is called the material theme. It got, somebody reported it had malware in it. Microsoft kind of did their own investigation and sort of overreacted and literally ripped it out of the marketplace, blocked the author, and actively uninstalled it across basically the whole globe, saying, yes, there was malicious intent. And then after like a couple of weeks of not really revealing details, they had to go ahead and do a rather large mea culpa, written, or at least by Scott Hanselman, isn't he like the guy for, like, he's a huge .NET, like he's way up there in Microsoft in the .NET org. So that's quite a thing to see Scott Hanselman have to come in here and be like, yeah, we got this wrong. We moved too fast. And it's a false positive. But yeah, just a a cautionary tale of trying to make a living off putting stuff on a store that you don't own. I don't know. I don't know really what the lesson is there, but it was sort of fun to find. Moving into some more Microsoft news.
Oh.
Yes.
I mean, the lesson there, if anything, is what if this had been? What if it hadn't been a false positive and they had moved slower, right? Like, what's the opposite of it? And not only that, but like, this was for a set of extensions inside of a coding, an IDE, right? What about in all of the other platforms where it's the same type of infrastructure, right? At the end of the day, we're relying on, and people are relying on this infrastructure, this platform for validating things like that. And I'd rather them get it wrong, right, on that side of it than the other side of it, you know? But the human component is interesting. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, the thing that kind of, I think, bent some people out of shape on this one was that Microsoft like came out and said, yeah, we found malicious intent, right? And and it was because, and you know, it was understandable. They would look at it. It was obfuscated code that was calling, I think, exec, .exe directly and doing some stuff and downloading like absolutely it had characteristic trademarks of malware. But like Microsoft came out and said, we looked at it and confirmed it's malware, and that's why we're pulling it. This person did this with, like, they came out and said this person did this with malicious intent. And then when pushed on it, they're like, oh yeah, we were wrong. So moving faster or moving it, sure. But then to sort of kind of screw up the actual investigation and be like, to basically say, hey, this developer is pushing out malware intentionally with a malicious intent. Like that's hard to go back on. Yeah. And so it's like, sure, react quickly, block it, stop the bleeding, say, hey, we're investigating it, and then do it right. Awesome. But they kind of didn't do that. They just kind of was like, yep, this looks bad. And you would think like Microsoft would be able to know, would have the wherewithal to do that kind of investigation correctly, even at a fast pace. So that was the overreach for them. Because you're right, they should act fast and stop bleeding if there's suspicion. But then you should also pump the brakes and, hold your mouth shut until you actually for sure get to the bottom of it. And they just kind of got it wrong, which is fine. They're humans. It's important to understand that there's humans there too. Okay, so moving, stop giving that job to insurance.
There was a big thread about that actually from Malware Jake on Twitter about that. Earlier this week was that at the end of the day, threat hunting is not an entry-level job.
Yeah.
And there's this whole interesting conversation happening about that in the cybersecurity industry, right? Of like, how do you sort and solve for that? And how do you bring up people in the industry in that space for it? So that's an interesting point, Jason, about like, stop giving jobs like that to interns, right? It's hard. Because how do we get involved the next round of people involved in it? It's a hard problem to solve.
Okay. Moving along. So this is more just Microsoft general news. I guess in this month, sometime in the middle of this month, Microsoft's going to start prompting users using M365 apps or just Office, as you know them, to go ahead and save their stuff on OneDrive. This is going to happen to devices where you have not configured that user for known folder mode. So that is redirecting basically documents and stuff to their OneDrive. If they don't have that, they're going to start getting this notice and fix. Ooh. Also, there was a bunch of news articles that went around earlier last month that Microsoft is going to have this free ad-supported version of Office that you install on your local device and can do a minimum number of things. That was apparently just a test. Just kidding. Absolutely, some people got screenshots and started writing news reports on it. And Microsoft came out and said, we did build that, but that was the test. We actually have no plans to roll this out at the current time. So a bit of a mountain over a molehill, but I don't know, maybe. They're not saying they're not going to release it. They're just saying they don't have any plans to.
For now.
For now, exactly. A couple of two different safeguard holds that have been resolved this month. So if you are trying to roll out Windows 11 24H2 and you have some devices running AutoCAD 2022, they may have been blocked. And sometimes those safeguard holds are rather opaque and you're not quite sure why. But this is why. That was a known issue holding it back. And I believe in this scenario, Autodesk released a new version of AutoCAD to fix this issue, and therefore that safeguard will not removing the safeguard hold, I guess, but the solution is available to simply update the latest version of AutoCAD. Similar with Asus, so a very small number of Asus models were having blue screens, and so Microsoft went in and put a safeguard hold, preventing you from moving up to 24H2. Asus released a new version of the BIOS that fixes this. Microsoft has since added that into the driver and firmware catalog, which allows you to deploy it via, at least for now, WSUS and Windows Update for Business, or I guess now AutoPatch. So if those are blockers for you, go ahead and do that. That leads us to a reminder. We've said this a couple of times now, but I'm going to keep saying it. We'll say it for one more month. Next, I think it is in next month, in April 18th, WSUS driver synchronization will cease to exist or cease to function. That is only the functionality of WSUS syncing from the large driver catalog that has billions of updates of drivers in it. Was usually generally a bad idea to do anyways. This does not impact Config Manager users that are using the HP or Lenovo or Dell update catalogs. That will continue to work. Another big splash is Microsoft announced their Majora 1 quantum chip. If you haven't heard of that, that was kind of made a big splash. And then, of course, there was a certain amount of backlash of like, well, maybe this is a little bit of a, what's the right word? They might be over promising here that, hey, we can solve some amazing problems. The real impact here is the idea of that this quantum chip would allow us to do simulations that previous to us would take, hundreds of years. In theory, it could be done in hours or days. But I find it a little bit, I don't want to say vaporware, but like, they're like, hey, this can fit in the palm of your hand or in a wristwatch, but it actually has to be running like almost -30
Kelvin. Yeah, it almost has to be at absolute zero for it to actually function.
Right. And not like 0 degrees Fahrenheit. We're talking like actual 0
Kelvin.
degrees
Yeah.
Kelvin. And I don't have a good picture of it, but so they show you this chip in the hand, and it's like, yeah, but to actually run it, you need, a whole room dedicated in like nitrogen cooling and like all sorts of crazy stuff. So no, you aren't going to be running super advanced AI in a wristwatch anytime soon. But it is an interesting breakthrough, I would say. And again, of course, there's some debate about whether or not this is an actual real breakthrough or not. And I am not anywhere near intelligent or educated enough to actually know whether that's true or not. But it made a big splash. And if it's true, could legitimately be quite cool.
I mean, it's interesting. If nothing else, it's interesting just from perspective. I mean, remember when the first whole quantum computing prototype thing came out at Ignite 3 or so years ago, right?
Yeah.
It's interesting if from nothing else, from a Moore's law perspective of where it's all advanced and the advancements that have happened since then, not necessarily directly from that, but on other platforms that surrounded it, right? With the development then for large language models, as well as other things that were reliant on some of those ideas more so than anything else. So it's interesting what it'll be like, what the impact of it is, necessarily the usage of it, but the impact on the relevant adjacent technologies, I think, is more interesting over the next 18 months.
Yep. So moving along, if you are using Skype, sorry.
RIP Skype, pour one out.
Yep. Moment of silence. So this is going to get deprecated, and obviously your, parents and grandparents are going to all move over to Teams because that's absolutely the correct solution. Just to note that this will include Skype interoperability. So it's like, yeah, you also can't. And I'm actually not super familiar at this point. I'm kind of out of the Skype game, but whatever interoperability it had with Teams, I think also dies with it. So it's not like it's just, well, we're no longer supporting Skype, but you can continue to use it and it'll work. It feels like they're really going to go ahead and set its head off and be like, yeah, you can't talk to Teams anymore. This is truly good and dead. One other thing that I saw, this came in Message Center, and I tried to find a non-Message Center link. If you are using the new Outlook, note that they are going to start pushing Copilot chat agents into both Outlook, the new version, both on the desktop and the web. I don't have much more to give you other than the fact that they're going to start rolling that out in this month. And so take a look. That concerns you, go ahead and take a look. And I don't know if you can block it or not. But, it's there. I mean, I know there's a lot of discussion about new Outlook versus old Outlook anyways. Moving on to Intune news. Not a lot in my mind. There's a new, and I've known about this for a while. I didn't know it took them this long. If you're using Windows Update for Business reports, they haven't got around to naming them auto patch reports yet. Again, these are the ones that have heritage back to update compliance reports in what was it called, Advanced Desktop Analytics or something, other analytics that was in Config Manager, and then got owned by the Windows Update for Business team. They've added a substate for updates, which was really just a more granular reason for whether it's actually successful or not. So if it's not, you can actually ideally get a little better information about what that error is. If you are doing, if you have the Intune connector for Active Directory, they've released an update to that, so you can use a lower privilege account. I'm not sure that that's tied to any particular vulnerability or CVE, but that is obviously good news. If you're using that, you can go ahead and have a less privileged account running that. There was a bunch of new device configuration for Apple, so and that's iOS, iPadOS, and macOS. So that's good. If you are trying those, and then this one was interesting. I haven't seen this. I don't know, Rudy, if you have limited live chat support in Intune. So I guess they're very clear. Like, not everyone's going to get this. Not every tenant.
Only the ones that pay a lot of money, I guess.
Is that it? Is that your guess? So yeah, you might be able to have a live chat support. Man, why do I think that when they say live, what they really mean is we have an AI chatbot? Like that seems
like Copilot to me.
Yeah, that's what it means.
That's like Copilot.
Yeah. So anyways, not a ton there for Intune. And this is really late breaking. I actually only found this like 15, 20 minutes before, but if you are a Config Manager customer, literally yesterday, they released a new KB or hotfix, and I've heard already that it is showing up in the Config Manager console. The three big fixes here, and there's a few, but that I had heard from people, which is if you are using an alternate content provider, so that would be somebody like, where are they? Adaptiva or 1E. Those systems sometimes they cease. We're not working across a cloud management gateway or management acting as a cloud distribution point. That's fixed in this update. Thankfully, so is the auto upgrade of a CMG. So I think last month I mentioned that I had heard some anecdotal evidence from people saying, "Hey, my CMG was broken during an upgrade." Looks like that also has got fixed. And then there was also a bug in maintenance window offsets, where if you had an offset to a maintenance window that made it cross a month boundary, so it basically failed to apply that maintenance window. So that's late breaking. Good stuff. Good to see some of those bugs continue to get fixed. And I think that's it. That's all I have. And I think that's basically it. We have nobody, unless Rudy wants to talk just off the top of his head, but I'm going to stop sharing.
Okay.
But
that's going to be fun.
No, I'm just kidding, Rudy.
Surprise.
We don't have to do that. Well, thanks everyone. Have a great week. We'll see you next month.
Yeah.
Talk to you later.
See ya.
years without candy, right, Rudy?
And
Uh,
adult candy.